today's show, I have a wonderful conversation with Mikelle Pellum, a fashion industry veteran with 26 years of experience from helps fashion entrepreneurs understand the technical side of things so they can bring their visions to life using cutting-edge digital tools. Enjoy as we delve into Mikelle's journey and learn why, after all of these years, she's still loving every bit of it. I'm excited to dive into this episode, but before we go all the way in, I want to be sure you've heard about the label launch blueprint. Staying stuck in DIY mode has caused too many talented designers to burn out. So after decades of experience in the fashion industry, I've taken all of my brand, design, sample development, marketing, and production expertise and put together an easy to follow step-by-step roadmap so you can take the guesswork out of your launch strategy. No more going around in circles, wondering what to do when and how to do it, and not having support along the way. I want you to give yourself the gift of clarity. Head over to cmdesignagency.com/label launch blueprint for more info, and I cannot wait to connect with you. Now let's get back to it. All right, welcome Mikelle to the Life by Design show. I'm so happy to have you here. We've known each other for a minute now, but it feels good to be able to sit down and have this conversation with you. So welcome. We're going to dive in.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Excited.
Absolutely. So I said we've known each other for a minute, but do you remember how we first connected? Because I can't remember if it was on Instagram or if it was actually on Clubhouse.
It was on Clubhouse.
It was on Clubhouse.
Yeah. I think I was invited. Kamal said that she had been speaking on this panel in Clubhouse, and at that point I had heard people talking about Clubhouse, but I hadn't actually gotten onto it because I was just not another social media one. I can't.
I know. But it was a time when everybody was trying to figure out what was going on in the world and how to connect.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And what that room was it Shan's room?
No, it was yours.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. That's how I got on there was it was your panel, and she was like, yeah, I think you would be really great for this.
Mhm.
And she must have mentioned to you that I would be there and maybe to bring me up. And so I was brought up as a guest. And then after that, I think you reached out to me on Instagram, and then we started talking.
Okay, so that's how it happened. All right, yes. Speaking of the Fashion Brand Incubator Club, hello. I got on Clubhouse like a week or so ago, and it is still there. Still have 13,000 plus people plugged in.
Wow.
And is everybody still getting on Clubhouse?
I don't even have the app on my phone anymore.
You don't have the app? I played with it a little bit, and there's a little activity happening, but way less fashion conversations.
Yeah.
So, but that just showed me how important our room was, because we ended up being, what was it, the top 10 fashion room, the top 10 design room out of all the rooms there. Part of the success that we had in that club was the fact that we were able to bring together passionate individuals who were well-versed in different areas of the fashion industry. We had good times in that room. We laughed.
Yeah, we did.
We cried. We had heartfelt conversations. It was a really good time.
Yeah.
And I remember one of our very first special guests was Jay Alexander. Were you there for that one?
No, I kind of joined while y'all had been going and had something going for a while, so I missed something going. So I heard there were some good guests.
Yeah, and too bad we couldn't even record back then. But he came and dropped some nuggets, and by the way, he might be coming onto the Life by Design show. He graced us with his presence here, but he was one of my favorites. And you were there for Tokyo James, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, he was great too.
That's part of the reason I started a podcast. We still need to have these conversations.
Yeah.
And why I invited you to come today, because I know that you were one of the people who was just so open as well and willing to share your expertise and your knowledge. And you seem genuinely interested in up-and-coming designers getting the right information.
Yeah.
And not giving up. Right?
Yeah.
So thank you once again for being here, because we need to do this some way, somehow. in order for certain people to tap into the the process, the reality of what it takes to launch a collection. And
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And there's not enough. I feel like there are some like fashion-esque podcasts, but
mm,
not enough that give you the information that you really do need, you know? I mean,
yeah,
because we
what are
could
your facts
we could
about?
talk about, you know, the couture and luxury and blah blah blah. But
Uh,
like that was fun.
yeah, that
Now how
was
am I gonna run this business?
exactly. But is that because it's people that are those people in the industry, or are they fashion industry enthusiasts? I mean, it's
I
all
I think
interesting.
it might be a little of both.
Okay.
And just like people, I, there are a lot, I think a lot of them are creative people. And,
Mm,
you know, creative people, and I'm not mad at us for that, but, you
not
know,
at
a lot of us really like to talk about the creative,
sure.
but not necessarily all the other things that need to go
Okay.
into executing. You know, I actually, interestingly enough, I saw, as I was scrolling last night, I saw this video of Rick Owens talking about creativity
Mm,
and the idea versus the execution. And he
mm,
was like, you know, there's a million creative people, but what kind of separates those creative people from the people that are successful and having success in the business is the execution. It's the small details. It's understanding what the customer actually needs, you know, and
right.
not just creating willy nilly, you know. And I think a lot of us like to talk about the creating willy nilly part and not really talking about executing and understanding what you actually need
Mhm,
to have a successful business.
mhm. We're gonna go in deep on a couple of things, but I think that's one of the issues, yeah, because when new designers see that the end result is glorified more than the process, they
Hmm.
think it's that easy. They think they can just be creative and put out beautiful product,
Yep.
and it's just gonna take off like that because they're that creative.
Yes.
But yeah, there's a
That
whole
part.
machine. There's a whole machine behind it. Okay, so let's get into one of the reasons that I fell in love with you and having conversations with you in the first place. Because one of the things that I stress almost as much as having a strong brand persona and understanding who your customer is the fact that you need a tech pack.
Hmm.
Need a tech
That
pack.
favorite thing, one of my favorite things to talk about.
And you were one of the first that I was hearing actually say that out loud also,
Hmm.
because there was a lot of talk about not needing a tech pack. And so I'm like, who's telling designers they don't need a tech pack and why? And how's that gonna work out for them? So
Yeah.
yes.
And I feel like a lot of that is coming from self-taught designers. And there's
Mhm.
absolutely
Okay.
nothing wrong with self-taught
Understood.
designers. But I think sometimes they rely a little too heavily. Like you want your manufacturer to be your partner. Yes. But sometimes I think they rely a little too heavily on that. And the manufacturer, you know, they want your money.
Yeah,
So they'll come to you and say, no, you don't need that. We'll take care of
of
it.
course.
You
Of
know, and there are some things that they do take care of. I'm not as concerned about you know, the inside construction. But my job is to tell you what I want aesthetically this to look like. And I can't just give you a sketch and say, hey, or make it, you know, like I gotta give you some details. And in order to give you some details, like you gotta know what you want, you
absolutely.
know?
Absolutely. I'm gonna change that, right? People like you are gonna tell them the truth so we can get them on the right track. So before we go too deep on that part of the conversation, I want to talk about something else. I learned recently that you were a designer when you first started.
Oh yeah.
I don't know how I
Yes.
didn't know that. I did not know that.
Still a designer. I don't put it out there as much, but yeah, I still design stuff. I still like to, yeah.
Oh, see, Mikelle, I thought you were a technical designer from start to finish. I don't know how I missed that. So can you Tell us a little bit about your designer journey.
It's interesting because what I was doing in school has absolutely nothing with what I ended up doing once I started working. So when I
Okay.
was in school, I was designing suits. And I really liked the structure. I liked, how long it takes for you to like hand do a collar and do the
Oh,
hand rolling.
oh, oh,
Love that stuff. Love that stuff.
yeah.
Like I would be sitting in the car just with my needle,
Oh,
sewing away. But I
wow.
loved all of that construction. I love flat pattern. And
Mhm.
it was just really enjoyable to me, the whole sewing process. And then, you get out of school and you got to get a job. And so I applied to a lot of different places, and the place that was the most friendly and I'll just be at most friendly. But
Okay. I understand, by the way. Yes.
um
Yeah.
it happened to be an activewear company. And
Ooh,
I would have
okay.
never thought that that would be my path. But I got there, I started working with it. I also at that time activewear wasn't what it is now. Like right now, like lounge and street and even workout clothing and even Nike, like Nike wasn't as big as it was at the time.
Right. Yeah.
And so I never even thought of that as a pathway, like you kind of, it was just like workout clothes. Like who's
Right.
designing that? You don't really think about it. And so when I started working there, I remember thinking that, this was kind of going to be a stepping stone to whatever, not thinking that it would be something that I really enjoyed. And also not realizing just how much expertise you really need to understand. Like you really need to understand the body.
Right.
And when you're, if you're working for somebody like a Nike that works with athletes, like understanding an athlete's body and function and understanding that you have to put certain seams in certain places because the athlete is going to move a certain way. You need to make sure that you're not putting something that's going to hold them back from performing. And I've always been sort of a thinker, and I really loved math. I really love science. I think the thinking behind how to create the garment and how to construct it in a way that just made sense for somebody wearing it and function for them. I think that really resonated well with me. And that was why I really took to activewear
Ooh,
and continued to stay in that lane until I moved into more product development and product management.
okay. I think that's something else we found out. We kind of crossed paths and we didn't know it way back when,
Right.
decades ago. Yeah. So see, small world. Sometimes I say this industry seems massive. It's really not. It's small. So your
Yes.
reputation will precede you. People are gonna remember. It's important
So
to
be nice to those people, even the ones you don't like.
yes. Okay. So how did you transition then? We started to talk about product development. How did you transition from design then into the product development space rather, and then technical design specifically?
Well, interestingly enough, I was never an actual technical designer. Activewear was one of the first places that really kind of dove into using computers and flat sketching on a computer. You really need to understand construction really well to do the flat sketches well. And
Right.
I had my first supervisor who at one point really drove me crazy because she used to like take out a red pen and would mark over all of the sketches. But I have to say, I feel like I became a much better designer
Mm,
because of her, because she was so like, this needs to be this way. This construction doesn't make sense. And, and at the time, of course, you're young and I've just come out of college and I just thought I was, I thought I knew what I was doing. Right.
as we
And
all
here she comes
right?
and she's like, nope, nope, nope. So I really credit her with giving me such a really great solid foundation to go off of. Now there are certain things that I see right away, like when I look at my students' work, but I'm like, nope, that should be this and this construction line. How are you going to get into it? And then my next job, I also went into activewear and I became senior designer. And the responsibility of a lot of those things became just on me. Yeah. Once you become the senior designer, you're the person who's checking everything. And so if your sample comes in jacked up, that was your fault.
Well, you have a problem with the merchandiser, you have a problem with everybody. Right. The finishing details are so important. How you finish that hem, how you finish that seam, every bit of it just makes a difference. And many designers, I find, when they're coming in, they design
this wonderful thing, but then it's like, okay, so what kind of zipper is that? What kind of binding is that? Are you gonna have 2 needle stitching on the binding or a single needle? Because that's gonna make the binding look a little bit different. Like one looks a little puffier than the other, and yeah, it's like they don't necessarily, I can speak for just the students in my class. It's like, once we get to the point where we're talking about those types of things, they're sort of blown away that they even have to consider that stuff. And I'm like, yeah, you do, because you don't want to leave that up to somebody else, especially when it's your brand and you're the one paying the $300-$400 for the sample. And the sample comes back and it's not exactly what you want. And now you can't use it for this. You got to get another one. This is when I ask you, what type of binding do you want? What kind of zipper should they buy? Where should they get it from? Because if it's a special zipper and you can only get it from the company in Canada, which was an actual thing that happened, because they're the only ones that have it. You need to be the person, you need to know, and you need to tell them all of those details, because if not, they're just going to use whatever, and send you your sample. And then you're going to be mad that it doesn't look like that. And for the last 5 years that I was working in outerwear, one of the other problems was not only is it a waste of money, and waste of your time because you waited 2 or 3 weeks for the sample to come in and it's wrong. But then the other thing is, we were always right up under the gun of a meeting. And so now if the sample is not right,
oh no,
we don't have time to get another one. So now that style is just completely out.
Yeah. Definitely not a good thing.
Yeah.
And designers who go into this sample development process without a tech pack mentioned how that sample is costly when they don't have a tech pack and they don't have a VOM and they don't have the call outs and all the measurements, the specs, the instructions, not the construction instructions per se, but the instructions on how to have that sample come together.
Yeah.
The sample house is going to make it the best way they feel they should. And if it's wrong and you haven't specified, that's not their problem, because you left it to them.
Right.
So if you don't lay it out and have a tech pack that's not decked out and production heavy, not a production ready tech pack, but a basic tech pack, even for that first sample, you're going to be out of luck. You're going to be paying for a lot of revised samples. And on the flip side of that, if you go in with a proper tech pack, it doesn't have to be expert level, but it's got to be tight. And they choose not to follow something in the tech pack, right? Maybe it was an oversight. Maybe they thought they knew better, right? And you really needed it to be that way. They have to fix it on their dime. So that's part of why I just think it's such a disservice for designers to feel like they can just wing this thing, because it's just not going to work out well on their side.
Yeah. Do you remember there was one episode while we were on Clubhouse?
Yeah.
And there was one particular person who came up and she was talking about this pant that she was making, and she said that she had made it like 4 or 5 times and it still wasn't right, and she had spent thousands of dollars and given it to some pattern maker. And I was like, girl, it's a pair of pants. What are you doing? 5 times? Are you kidding? $5,000? What?
That makes no. That
It
should
was crazy.
never happen. It's because she was winging it. It's
Hmm.
because she didn't have somebody like you or like me telling her that there are steps that are not worth skipping. We spoke about this before at some point. Half the battle is knowing what you need and tapping in, plugging in, connecting with people who can guide you toward the goal that you say you want for
Right.
yourself or for your brand.
Right.
Nobody's meant to do this thing alone. There are people who have done it before and are willing to share the information. And I know it's not always easy to find those people, but nowadays with social media and more people being transparent about the industry and platforms like this, yes, you have access. So hopefully
Yeah.
like her are not going to have to go through that. They're gonna figure it out from the get-go and get that basic jetpack and
Yeah.
um not have to feel that pain because that's the part that hurts, right? When we see something that was so unnecessary, knowing
Wow.
that they had a conservative budget to begin with, and now that they have spent it, they're so discouraged and they don't want to move forward to actually learn how to launch because
Right.
they've spent everything. And yeah, that's the most heartbreaking part to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember reaching out to her on Instagram
Mm. Okay.
and saying to her, hey, like, I have some videos on
Mm,
how to create a tech pack. If you need help, let me know. I'm not sure what happened to her. She emailed me back and thanked me, but then she didn't go any further than that. I remember that because I was just like, I can't believe this girl is spending all this money
yeah.
with whoever this person and the other person. I don't know who they are. I don't know who they were, but in my head, and I don't know the full situation, but in my head, I kept thinking that she was getting taken advantage of because I'm like, by the fifth time, if you haven't gotten this pant right,
By the third time, Mikelle. I mean,
yeah, even before
the
then,
second one, okay, the first time if you might tweak a little something. The second time you may tweak a little something, but that third one should be exactly what you need. There's never,
exactly,
in my experience, there's never a need to go past the second or third sample. And the third
yeah.
third is rare. You
Even if your second one is like correct and proceed, like there might be like little
right.
tweaks, you know.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about the fact that you transitioned into being a professor at
Yes.
FIT and Kent State University. What has it shown you about the young minds that are coming into this industry, and how are you helping to shape them?
Well, first of all, I love it. I really, really enjoy teaching them. It is kind of a give and take because, I give them all of my years of knowledge, but what they do for me is they really, one, encourage me because I'm seeing all of these young faces that are going into fashion and they're concerned about sustainability. They are concerned about being more inclusive. So I feel like they are really shaping the industry to be better.
Yeah.
And then I love their enthusiasm and they remind me of what I really enjoyed about fashion when I first got into it and I was really excited about it. And so that kind of just re-energized. But yeah, I try to give them some of the industry tidbits that most of us who went to school really didn't get a chance to hear
Yeah,
because there's a lot of theory that happens in school and I don't feel like there's enough um practical.
I was just thinking practical information and conversation happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I definitely try to impart as much practical as I can.
Mm,
And the class that I'm teaching this semester incorporates PLM,
mm.
which most designers don't like. I understand.
Oh, yeah, we know.
But it's a necessary system that, helps everybody, brings everyone together. And it's one of the places where I start to help them understand that it is not just you
Right.
that is creating this whole vision. Like you're the one coming up with the creative and you have the vision of what this should be. But then you have to bring in the merchandisers and you have to bring in the sourcing people and the production people and logistics and supply chain and manufacturers and all these other people, like, and there are lots of other people that touch your style before it even gets in front into a warehouse so that it can then go onto the floor so somebody can actually
All
buy
right.
it. And so there are systems in place and other things that help all of it kind of come together and make this thing a reality,
Mm-hmm.
which I know that a lot of students just aren't thinking about. A lot of them are not even aware that they're not the only person that has the last say, you're
Yeah.
not, and when you're in school, you're kind of working in a silo. Like, you are the one who is buying all the fabric and buying all the notions and trims, and you're actually physically sewing the garment. And for a lot of people, particularly people who are working in the US ready to wear industry, you don't even touch a sewing machine.
Yeah.
You touch fabric,
Or so
you touch a finished sample,
yeah.
but you're not sewing it. You're not making a pattern. You're not doing any of that stuff. Having the knowledge of how to do that contributes tremendously
Mm,
to you getting a better end result.
oh
But
yeah.
you are not actually sewing anything.
No,
you
no.
know so and that's always news to a lot of students, and even those who are self-taught that I speak to, and they're like, oh, we're not sewing the garment. I'm like, nah,
No.
getting somebody else to do that. Some people will sew their first sample just to like save some money, or they want to have a sample to give to a manufacturer,
Right. True.
you know
Sure.
but yeah, most of us, we're not sewing. We're not sketching all day. We're doing a
No.
little bit of sketching, but there's a lot more. That was one of the things that I really liked about when Tokyo Days came and spoke, and kind of like level set, because I think you were the one who asked him, like, what was your regular day like? And he was saying, I put out a lot of fires during the day. And I
Right.
think that most people feel like designers, we're sketching all day, we're shopping,
Right.
and
Like all the fabric and
yeah. And I'm like, I might do a little of that. If the learning at a certain time of year when you're doing your design developments.
right, right.
But the rest of the time, you're doing
Manage.
tech packs, you're in fittings, you're answering questions about what trim do you want, what fabric do you want. Well, we have to come up. The supplier can get this fabric anymore, so we got to come up
Yes.
with a substitute.
Yeah.
They sent these. Which one do you want? Like, there's so many other things that you are doing as a designer, and it's not all just creative stuff. There's a lot of other things that go into that.
Oh yeah. And that's part of why I launched the label launch blueprint, because it is easy to design.
Mhm.
If you're creative, you can design, you can cut the pattern out, you can make something beautiful.
Yeah.
But just understanding how to bring that from where it is as that sample. And first of all, can we just talk about the fact that you shouldn't be designing until you have a brand and a customer base that you're designing for, right?
That part.
Whole other conversation. But the design is the only forward-facing part. Everything that has to go into the system or into the process behind the scenes is more important almost.
Mm-hmm.
Having something pretty, because if you don't have that support system behind you to get it to market and to do it in a way that you can do it more than once, right?
Right.
Making one pretty garment and selling a few of one is not the goal. The goal is to build a system and have a team behind you that is available so that you can put out collection after collection after collection, and
Exactly.
have some peace of mind knowing that all of the pieces of the puzzle are where they need to be and everything is in order. So yeah, putting out those fires that Tokyo James was talking about, it's everything. And it's from the start. Once you decide to go with a silhouette and you're going to put that design out, I think that's when the work starts, right?
Yeah.
Aside
Yep.
from the branding and customer, understanding your customer part, after you design, that's when it starts. That's when it's
Mm-hmm.
that BOM in
Yep.
order, get the tech pack tight, right?
Yeah.
So tell me now more about 3A3 Design. How did that come about? And did you start your company before you became a professor or after?
Before.
Before. Ooh.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, I have been wanting to teach at FIT for a while. And I would apply, every time they had a job opening, never got in. So eventually I was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna leave that alone. So what happened was I was in a terrible situation. I feel like that's how everybody that's how it always starts. But I was working I was working at this really, really awful company. And my sister was sick. She had breast cancer.
Oh.
And she was recovering. And one of the ways that she really enjoys recovering is she's also a teacher. And so getting back to like being with kids and doing all the other things that she was doing was one of the ways that, she really kind of started to feel like herself. And, when you are, when you have somebody who's sick, you want to do something. A lot of times you feel like you can't, right?
Yeah.
So she asked me to make these cheerleading outfits for the kids that she was working with. And I was like, okay, here's something I can do for my sister.
Yeah.
Well, I was being ran ragged at this company and I had completely forgotten about these skirts, like little cheerleading skirts. So I'm at work being ran ragged. And she calls me on my cell phone and she's like, hey, when did you send those skirts? Because our first game is tomorrow and I wanted to have them wear them. And I promptly dropped the phone because I was just like, oh my God, I forgot about them. Because she was like, oh, did you send it like in a later delivery or whatever? Because our mail already came. And I was like, oh my gosh, Nika, I totally forgot about it. And so she was just like, okay, it's no problem. Can you, maybe get them next week? But I felt awful. I felt really, really awful. So I spent the entire weekend doing these little cheerleading skirts. And I had this epiphany at like 3 a.m. on like Saturday night. And I was talking to a friend and I was like, I'm going to quit my job because I can't stand this place. And I'm going to do something else. Okay. So I went in that Monday, quit my job, and I partied for like 2 weeks because I was so stressed out. And right after that, I started freelancing. And as it kind of progressed and I was freelancing all the time, I finally just decided, because I also sort of became like the go-to person wherever I was going. People had like Illustrator questions. And I was like, oh, you just do blah, blah, blah. And so it just became, oh my God, go ask Mikelle. She knows how to do it. And so I eventually just, was like, I should package this, And I actually had an intern at one time who had like interned in Milan and studied in Italy, the whole thing. Could not find a job because he did not know how to use Illustrator. And so he said to me, hey, I'll buy you dinner. Can you just show me how to use Illustrator?
Okay.
Came over to my house. We spent like 2 hours together. He's like, Cal, I have learned more. He's like, I paid for like an $800 class and it was like 8 weeks. Actually, it was more than that, but it was like 8 weeks. And he's like, I have learned more with you sitting here for 2 hours than I've learned in the 8 weeks I was in this class. He's like, you should start a company. You should start teaching other people. And I was like, maybe. And then once I started freelancing, I was just like, yeah, for sure. Like, this is something I can do now that I actually have some time. And so that was how it was born. I just started like teaching classes. My first class was, if you remember, CompuServe. My first class was at CompuServe, which is now completely defunct.
Yes.
Yeah, well, they had like computer rooms in their basement. So I rented a computer room. And if you remember when Women's Wear Daily had an actual newspaper, I saved up and put an ad in the Wednesday edition, because that was the one. Put an ad in the Wednesday edition that I had this class. And I got like 3 or 4 people in my first class.
Wow.
And it just took off from there. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that story. Ah, that goes to show you the thing that you're good at. And there are so many other people who would just love to, learn,
Yeah.
especially
Who'd have
here.
thunk it? Because I had always just assumed that everybody was doing it and had no
No.
idea that, especially at that time, Illustrator was still sort of a new thing. Like now you go into the industry, like it's an expectation. And now the new thing is 3D, you know?
Yeah.
So I have group classes in Illustrator.
Okay.
And then for people who want to know Photoshop, I do private training with Photoshop. We just start going right into learning how to use pen tool,
Mm,
learning how to
mhm.
draw a flat sketch. Sometimes I'll actually have a tech pack class too. So sometimes we'll actually bring out a garment and,
Yeah.
talk about the construction of the garment. And then we also go into like adding color and prints, and that's where
Mhm.
everybody will get really excited.
That's the fun part.
Yeah, that's the fun part. And then you leave the class with like, a little something that you can take home and say, look what I did today.
Mhm.
A little CAD with like, a t-shirt with some color and maybe a print or a stripe or something like that.
That's
So,
exciting.
but it's basically like when you leave that class, you have the skills to be able to draw more basic things. And the way that you advance more is you just have to practice. There are other things that, I can teach you and brushes and, the other stuff. But for the most part, most people really get a lot out of that first class. As long as you continue to use the program, you'll get better.
Is that the primary one you would um always suggest, or is there another program that is just as good?
There are other programs that you could potentially use. There's like a Corel Draw. There's an app out right now called Rep Sketch, and you could just sort of like Frankenstein something together if you don't want to draw it yourself. And
Yeah.
then they have some basic like editing tools.
Okay.
You can do that kind of thing. But Illustrator is one industry standard.
Yes.
But two, I have not found another program that will allow you to create flat sketches that are as precise and accurate. And when you're talking about a flat sketch that will go on a tech pack, or will go onto a line sheet, or will go onto your CADs, which a lot of merchandisers at this point, even salespeople,
Mhm.
will use more so than a line sheet, actually. Um, you need that precision. You need something that is going to really tell somebody, is that, a single needle or a double needle stitch? All the details need to be there.
Oh yeah.
And I've heard people say, oh, well, I've just been doing Procreate. Now, at one time, all of us are, doing this by hand.
Seen that.
But I've also seen, at that time, we didn't have any other choice.
Right.
So those hand sketches were very, very precise and very, very detailed.
Mhm.
That's not the case that I'm seeing now. People are putting together what they call a flat sketch, and it looks like a less stylized version of an illustration. That's not gonna work,
Oh no. Yeah, you're right. Back in the day, that's why I was so resistant to using the tack, because I was, classically trained. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
my flat sketch looks like something that you make on Illustrator, but I would do it in like a minute, 2 minutes, right? But that's because I did it for so many years, over
Right.
and over and over and over again. So unless somebody has that level of training, no, you got to learn how to use the tech from day one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to shift a bit as we begin to wrap up. I have a couple other questions.
Okay.
Okay, this one is far removed from what we're talking about now. I want to talk about how you enter into this very busy lifestyle that you have, taking on all of these responsibilities of teaching and nurturing and sharing and helping, and then also having a life of your own outside of that. How do you start the day to make sure that you're able to do all the things that you do? Because I know you're always busy. How do you keep that smile on your face all the time?
I will either start out with either meditation, like 10 minutes, and I have like recorded meditation. So I'll just,
Really?
put on my headphones and do that. And if I don't have time, like if I'm running late or I press the snooze button too many times, I will just start with, just a morning prayer, a short prayer.
Okay.
And then I come downstairs and I bring my cat and I give my husband a kiss and say good morning.
Right.
And that's you. And the one other thing that I make sure I do not do is I do not look at my email or social media or any of that. I wait until like I officially sit down to start work before I start rifling through stuff because you can get caught up in that. And then, I've done that a few times. And all of a sudden I look up and I'm like, oh my God, I need to.
And then you start putting out all your fires for the day. No,
Yeah. And there's always so many, there's a lot of negative things on social media. One of the things I used to do, and I got this from when I was growing up. My mom used to listen to 1010 Wins.
Okay.
And so I continued that ritual. Well, probably like this has been almost 10 years, I think, at this point. But I started to realize that the news was just like I would wake up and I would be all excited and then I'd be brushing my teeth, listening to the news and just hearing about all the crap. Yeah, that was, and just all of a sudden, like my day went from here slowly to like,
Like sucked all
it sucked all the joy, I'm like, it's not even 9 o'clock yet. And I'm like mad.
Right. I was talking to my cousin recently, and she said that she keeps the TV on a channel that just tells you all the crap that's going on in the world, and
Yeah.
same thing. So no matter what the source is, if it's especially if it's news.
Yeah.
I agree.
News is terrible.
In the morning.
So I'll tune in every once in a while just to kind of like see what's going on. But it like 20 minutes, half hour tops, and then turn it off because I'm like, okay, I'm not missing much. The world is still standing. Everybody's still crazy. And
if you listen to it for about 15 minutes, you notice they just repeat the story. So like as soon
yes,
I'm done. I already got my news for the day. I'm done. 15 good minutes.
Right. It's the news. I think I had seen program that said around the time of the OJ trial. That was when they started doing the news cycle and the spin and talking and then re-talking about it and re-talking about it. Yeah. And it has never stopped.
It's a lot. It's too much. It almost seems like it's created to cause you to just worry about everything.
Yep.
Not even just forget about everything happening in your own home, but just stay in a state of angst all the time.
Yeah. Oh
it's
yeah.
Brainwashing. It's one of the other ways it keeps people stuck.
Yeah.
No, this world is a whole spectrum, and some things are there for a reason. And yeah, just watch how you spend your time.
For real. And honestly, at this point, like social media tell you everything you need to know. A quick scroll during lunch.
Like 3 minutes.
Call out.
It's true. Okay, we're not gonna go all the way there, but yes. Okay, so you recently posted the quote, "The most important thing is to try and inspire people so that they can be great in whatever they want to do." By
Kobe.
Yeah, and that is one thing, I think I mentioned it earlier, that I know to be true of you. You're consistently inspiring to others and an educator at heart, in my opinion.
Thank you.
So my question for you is, who inspires you?
Oh, definitely my parents. My father is he has been deceased for a few years at this point.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And my mom's still alive. They were both teachers.
Ooh,
And
wow.
it to the end. My mom is finally retired. My dad retired and then went back to DJ. But they both just really enjoy that and they've instilled that in us. And I remember my dad's favorite quote. It was his quote. but he would say, if I can help somebody along my journey through life, then my
Yeah.
living will not be in vain. And I've kind of taken that and incorporated that also in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I a few years before he passed away, I was his driver actually,
Oh,
because my mom called me and she was like, "Okay, he's got these two things that he's gonna go to. And I want you to try them." And I was like,
okay.
I got to spend my entire Saturday. It was the best Saturday. And
Oh,
so the first part of it, he was invited to brunch by his first class that he taught.
oh my God.
And fun fact, Lawrence Fishburne was in that class. He was not at the brunch,
Okay.
but he was one of the students that he taught at
Wow.
this high school in Bed-Stuy. And so they brought him back and we had brunch, and
Wow.
they all talked about how much he really inspired he inspired them.
Yeah.
And it was such a wonderful thing to watch them talk about how much, he really was such an influence on their lives.
Mm,
And what I had not thought about at the time was, like, this was when my dad was just coming out of college. So like he was
mm,
not that much older than most of the
wow.
students,
Really?
like he was what, 21, 22, and the students were like 14, 14, 15. So there were times when like they were out partying and he'd been out partying. But it was just so interesting to see. And I was like, wow, I hope that I have that effect on my students,
Mm,
when they're older and they remember that, that professor from the faculty was,
yeah.
she was really great and she helped me do blah blah blah. I'm like, just remember me on the catwalk when you're talking to them, just
Right. Right.
name drop my name.
Right. Oh my gosh. I love it. Okay, so you kind of went there, Mikelle. And I have another question at the end I'm going to ask you, but I'm going to have to change how I format these questions because y'all go deep. Both of us go all the way deep. But that was fantastic. Thank you for sharing. So my next question before we get there is what's next for 383 Design?
What's next? Well, we have a fashion business competition, which you were a judge on this season and were amazing. And so what we're doing is trying to show designers and help them understand and teach them the business side of fashion. So most of them, they got the creativity check,
Mhm.
but understanding all of the other nuances that it takes to create a fashion business and a fashion brand that's successful,
Right.
that's profitable. And so I am wanting to spend more time and get more sponsors for that so we can
Okay.
expand that and actually bring people together
Mhm.
across at some point.
Mhm.
And then
That's great.
the digital online course part of that is I am working on putting together the From Pencil to Production curriculum. And
Mhm.
so I am doing all of the digital classes.
Mhm.
And the first business course that we have is the merchandising course. And then
That's
working
good.
on getting other people together.
Mhm.
Note to self that just know that I'll be talking to you about that. But having other people come in and do an online course that feeds into a lot of those core principles that you do need and that we talk about within the fashion business competition. So if you aren't able to be in a competition, but you want to establish your fashion brand and you need to understand these things, don't want to spend, 2 or 3 more years getting an MBA or going to, wherever, or the money, let's just talk about that. You can then sign up for this course and get those things that you really need to really establish your fashion brand.
Yeah, and programs like that, you
Yeah.
really get in the goods. And
Yeah.
that's what I love about coaching and having that close proximity, access and space where students can, sit and lost my train of thought.
But to what you were saying, that's the other part of it, is being able to build that community of designers, because what I've learned from past contestants is they all exchange numbers, and they're all,
That's
like
so good.
encouraging each other and bigging each other up when they have, they launch things. And I I love that and really appreciate that. And all of us know, you need that, because
Yes.
no one else really understands what this is except another fashion business owner. So when you're talking about what you're going through, besides the fact that, if somebody's outside of fashion, they're like, what are you talking about? I said, what?
Exactly.
But then also someone who is not a business owner, they also don't understand that other part of it, where you're a creative person, but you got to talk to a lawyer, and you got to put
Like,
in your LLC papers, and you got to do all these other things that you don't necessarily want to do. But right now you're a team of one. And in order for you to get to a team of two or more, you need to do this stuff right now.
business. You have to have a
Right, right.
actually, and then build upon that foundation. You can't just
Exactly.
create, right?
Exactly.
We talked about a lot, but is there anything that I did not ask you that you wanted to share?
I would say, if you are a designer
Mm.
and you want to establish a brand or a fashion business, just know that creativity alone,
Mm.
it's not enough.
Right.
And the fact that you're creative thing, like you got that part. That's great. You got a bigger portion than a lot of other people do. But do you want a hobby, or do you want a business? And if you want a hobby, that's totally fine.
Right. It is. I agree.
But know that if you want this to be a business where you can
Exactly.
actually support yourself,
Ex-
and not just like a side hustle that you kind of get money from every once in a while. And even that, you have to understand some of these other business principles that are going to bring in customers, that are going to bring in sales, that are going to help feed what you're doing and focus you on creating things that your customer wants
that our market.
and that they are going to buy.
Exactly. Exactly. 100% agree. 100%. So before my last question, for those designers who are interested in connecting with you to learn more about maybe the Pencil to Production program or 383 Design itself, what's the best way to reach you?
You can reach me. You can find me in many different places. You can find me on LinkedIn under Mikelle Drew, or 383 Design Studio. I have a personal page and a business page. You can find me on YouTube. I have lots of really fun and interesting YouTube videos that are focused on digital design, as well as the principles of design and creating a brand. That is 383 Design, 383 Design Studio. And you can also find me on Instagram at 383 Design.
Okay, fantastic. I know I didn't ask you this before, but I'm gonna throw one more in there. What's the significance behind the 383? How'd you come up with that?
You know what? That was the address of the apartment I was in when everything started. It was
Oh,
383 East 17th Street.
so it's sentimental.
Yeah, because I got a few people who have said, it doesn't say what you do. And I was like, that's all right. I'll tell people what I do.
Yeah, still it has to have some significance.
Yeah.
And
Which
it,
I have to say, someone who is giving you good advice will probably tell you that in some way your company name should say a little bit about what you actually do. But for me, it was like a reminder of how far I've come, where it started.
Mm.
And then the other thing was, when I was approached to maybe think about changing the name, by then I had kind of I had been in for a while, and now people actually
You
were
couldn't.
knowing the name.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of felt like if I change it now, like I just got them to the point where people actually know what 383 Design Studio
No.
is. I'm like, I'm not changing it now.
No, you're good to go. Okay, so for our very last question,
Mhm.
when you come to the very end of your days and you have lived and loved and shared all that you hope you could, I know you spoke about your father's legacy and how he was able to impact so many people who still remember and have love for him. What would you like your legacy to be? How would you like to be remembered?
I would love for it to be very similar to my father in the sense that I hope that people will remember me as someone who is very giving and willing to help them move their careers and their businesses and their lives forward.
Mhm.
I said recently that I really want to abolish the phrase starving artist
Mm,
because
wow.
I feel like people just assume that they're not going to make a whole lot of money because they're an artist. You shouldn't have to feel like that. Like art is a legit um career. You should be paid for your artistic genius. I think a big part of that is just understanding how to put value on that. With
Mhm.
art, it's so emotional that it's hard to put value on your emotions. There's something that you
Yeah.
feel so strongly about. Um, but you can. And for a lot of us, we should because we're just giving it away. And so I want to help more artists understand that you can create a livelihood with this. And it's very possible, it's very doable. You just have to understand how to better ask for it and then establish a brand or a career that is very focused so that somebody knows
Mm,
you're the person I need to come to. How much is it?
exactly. I love it. Mikelle, this has been wonderful. I knew I'd have a good conversation with you because, remember back in the day. But this is good. We don't get to chill like this often enough. Thank you so much
Thanks for having me.
for coming and sharing and letting our audience get to know you and fall in love with you like everybody else who's come across you has. And yeah, I can't wait to see you continue to grow your company and touch more designers and blossom in who you are meant to be. And I'm just happy for what you've built and can't wait to see more. So thank you again, Mikelle.
So much.
Have you ever had a time when life was just doing too much? When my kids were small, life hit like a ton of bricks, and some things had to shift. And I thought that my designer dreams were over. We were a two-income household, so it got tight real quick, and that was a problem. I ignored it at first, but at that time, there was a small voice inside that kept saying that I should build my own brand. And today, I'm so grateful that I listened because it has been the biggest blessing. Do you also have a small voice telling you that there's something more in store? Do yourself a favor and pop into the show notes after this episode for some helpful links that I share so that up and coming designers like you can build the brand of their dreams. This is your time.